listening to 102.9 WFPRLP, Franklin Public Radio.
Recording in progress.
There we go.
There you can hear you now.
Can you hear us now, Kobe?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, great. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Economic Development Subcommittee meeting for January 8th, 2025 to order, time being 5:46. The meeting is held in the Municipal Building, Council Chamber, second floor of the Municipal Building. Note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and the Verizon Channel 29 for those who missed the live meeting. To listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using this number, 1-929-205-6099. This will not permit participation in the meeting. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens are able to join a Zoom webinar using the information provided on the agenda packet on the town website. The Zoom webinar ID number is 890-505-23175. Any participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar. In order to speak, participants who have entered full name and email address will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. Councilors Sheridan and Chandler are with me here in chambers, and Councilor Frangillo is online. And with that, we will go to the agenda item, which is review and discuss 2024-2025 goals update. So we will hopefully prioritize and set our goals for the rest of the term. Is that correct, Jamie?
That is correct, Madam Chair. So here are the goals. I just want to remind everybody and just try to scope out a little bit, because I know the master plan is going through the final month of review. I know there's a couple meetings coming up, and I know the goal on here is to prioritize or implement recommendations on the HPP master plan. And of course, the state, by the way, just so folks know, has not formally approved our open space plan. They did have comments. And we are working on implementing those comments. Those comments to implement from the state feedback are not very easy. So it's going to take some time to probably get that done, which would then eventually be baked into the master plan. But with the master plan work, there's still several other projects on this list. And, you know, obviously tonight's a key night because we got to get things ready for the committee to review, you know, maybe later in January. And then, of course, as we all know, the bylaw process takes 3 to 4 months to go through referral to planning board hearings. And then you notice when the planning board has a hearing and they extend out the hearing,
Right.
like the signs,
Yeah.
then it drags the process out a little longer. That's certainly within their right, and that's okay. It's not a critique, it's just a reality. So what we really need from the EDC tonight is really some guidance on 2 things. One, what goals on here do you want us to try to check off next? And then number 2, if there is anything that's low-hanging fruit as part of the master plan, because the 2 master plan representatives are on the EDC, we could splice those in now if they're low-hanging fruit or things that we could do. I would argue that making some of this stuff more complicated or divisive, or if there's gonna be a lot of division in the community on certain proposals, that may just extend out and, you know, kind of delay the length of time it could be to get bylaws through. So we have to be at least judicious and concentrate specifically on exactly what y'all would like us to do. And so that's what we're here for tonight. The one last comment I would make, Madam Chair, is the 40R bylaw. We've talked a lot about this, about do we want to put a bylaw on the books and have development react to that? Or do we want to use a project-specific site on 40R? There may be some sites that we could use to test that out if the committee wishes. And I can talk to some potential builders and site owners who are trying to engage in this. We could have someone come in that is maybe proposing a project that would qualify in downtown commercial for a 40R. If the committee would like me to reach out and make that offer to them, I'm happy to. And I think in the next few months, we could probably get them in here on a couple of very visible pieces of property in Franklin that might be advantageous. If you'd like me to offer that to them, I'm happy to have them come in and talk about 40R. Or any of those other issues. But other than that, I think the rest of it is pretty self-explanatory, and we're looking forward to the questions and feedback from the committee.
Thank you, Jamie. Brian, do you have anything to add?
No,
Okay. So I guess the one thing that I always find to be like is really important to me is this home occupation business bylaw. I think I would like to work on it. Like if you think, I guess like we have so many things we want to do. Like we need to make sure that you guys tell us like if we can actually do them or not, right? But I think like with this home occupation business bylaw, I think for me, I would like to see something about how do we be reasonable with like not really expecting a person who makes like a couple of dozen cupcakes a weekend to put in a grease trap when somebody else starts to build up that, like, where do they go? And then they have to go to a commercial kitchen. I get that. We need to take care of our infrastructure, but we also need to, there's a niche in there somewhere that we have to figure out how do we identify it. And I know it's gonna be really hard, but it could be just like how much water somebody uses. Like we keep track of how much water people use. If all of a sudden they start using too much water, maybe we need to go look and see what's happening at their site or something like that. So for me, like that's one of the things I really, I've really always been for like 7 years wanting to take more time to really work through that. And of course, there's a lot of master plan stuff and the 40R and everything that we've been talking about through the Franklin for All project. So, but I'm gonna ask Patrick, do you have any, Councilor Sheridan, do you have anything you'd like to make sure that we?
Do review and approve the Franklin Crossing neighborhood?
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's a good one, too. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I definitely, that's great. Thank you. Counselor Chandler?
Hi, Madam Chair. No, we have a great list still that we can continue to work on here. I don't want to add too much. We were pretty aggressive with our goals with the town administrator, and we've had some good, I think these are some great goals.
So
to
the
stick
ones
with.
that are here.
Yes, the ones that are here.
Do you
I
have
wanna
any
finish
that,
things up.
okay. Do you have any that are priority to you?
No, I don't.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thanks. Counselor Frangillo?
Yeah.
I left him for last.
I like the ones that have come up. I mean, I was happy with this list in the first place. Just going down the list, you know, I think for the most part we can consider ADUs done, even though it says in process. The other ones we say are complete. The 40R is, we've had a few hearings on this. We've had different people come in and present. I still feel that an overlay district in downtown, as originally proposed by Franklin for All, is the best way to do that, which essentially says, here's our baseline zoning, but if you want some leniency in these directions, we'll give you that in exchange for stricter affordability requirements, and then we do that in a way that is proactive. It says, here's the area that we want that to exist in, and that then allows, you know, that to me is a better system than like waiting to do like single negotiations with developers. I feel strongly that that is the best way forward. If the way to that has to be, you know, a pilot project in that area, and we you know, are confident that there is a developer or two that would be open to that, then fine, great. You know, but I think we're really working toward, again, I think a lot of our zoning, we've talked about this a lot of our zoning is overly restrictive as to create an atmosphere or create an environment where developers have to come and do these battles, negotiations with the town every step of the way. And while that might sound good from like, that makes sure that we always get our fingers in every project and get to shape it a little more in the direction that we want, what really happens is we just see less investment in people's properties, less development, and we particularly have seen this downtown. Now that the food pantry building is down, I mean, we have this massive triangle that should be the economic hub of not only Franklin, but really the surrounding region, and you know, it's mostly empty, and I think really having that building down really shows that. So that to me is a space where we should be proactive in saying, hey, here's an opportunity for you to come and develop in this way. And we get to set the rules by which they're coming to develop. 40R allows us to be much stricter on design requirements and all of that. So I don't know, that's how I'm still feeling about that. I'd be open to discussing further. Again, just taking them in order, not necessarily in order of my priorities. The prioritize and implement recommendations coming out of the Franklin for All and master plan, that is the part that is going to excite me most. I think that there are multiple pieces in both the economic development section and the housing section of the master plan that can be implemented relatively quickly and in line with the general feel. And all of these are, again, about changing the underlying rules, because change doesn't happen that quickly. Change is incremental, but we need to change the rules that allows that change to happen over time. So a lot of that excites me is really goal 1 and really goal 1.1, action 1.1 of both the economic development section and the housing section, which are, again, recognizing that the downtown should be the focus for both our housing and economic development goals, and we still have work to do to ease restrictions. That includes, we didn't look at minimum lot sizes, design standards. There's a whole bunch around like signage and window transparency and open windows that like maybe a live band could have some music spilling out into the street, and that's not gonna end the town. So there's some pieces in that. Being facetious, yeah. Anyway, so those ones excite me. Branding and marketing, I was so happy that we made the progress that we have. Now we go to phase 2, which is really one of the goals all along, that is we wanted wayfinding signs to help navigate, there are other pieces of phase 2, but to help navigate around and like engage with Franklin. Someone just told me the town that they're from. There's a small town in Georgia that's like way smaller than Franklin, and they're just like their visual identity and like just going to their, just looking up them was like way more, and it just looked like a place that you wanted to go to. It probably isn't. It's probably less to do than Franklin, but it's just like, it's like treating itself like it's a place worth going to and investing in and moving to and starting a business in. And that's really what the logo is like. A necessary, but it takes up a lot of oxygen in the room because that's like an easy thing to focus on. But really, that was just the means for creating a larger,
the fun
more
stuff.
cohesive
Now we get to do the
visual
fun
aesthetic,
stuff.
including wayfinding signs. So I don't know where. I know that a lot of this we're feeling needs more money. Like we can't, we're kind of just waiting for grants for that. So I understand that, but I'm excited that like I hope that we are prioritizing applying for grants for that, or finding opportunities to move some of that.
Do you want Amy to give us an update of what's gonna happen next? Because we have next steps, right? And then,
Sure, so I think that is the goal, is to try to, find grants for the next phase, which would be implementation and wayfinding. Before that, though, we're waiting on the brand guidelines to be finalized, and then we're gonna be doing trainings with our department so that they actually know how to, implement it. The low-hanging fruit stuff, making sure all of our letterhead is uniform, billing, all those things that we can do at no cost, really. So those will be the first things.
Yeah.
And then the second phase will be looking for money for implementing wayfinding. And we'll have to have a whole process for that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
thank you, Amy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that is exciting me. I just know that like it's not necessarily bylaws at this point. It's like just money and projects and capital investments, and that might not be as easy for us to get a say in, but still excites me. Home occupation business bylaw. Yeah, we've again had this come before us a few times, and we kind of always walk away feeling like, oh, it sounds so complicated as to not be worth it. And yet it never really sounded that complicated from a point of what you just said, where like, let's just put a cap, and this is what other geographies have done, is just like put a cap on production. Like you can be up to this many units or this much usage, and we can be super strict on that. Like I don't need to be like being some like home occupation business like hub of the state. Like we can be, but like there's
Right.
I'm okay with being like pretty strict, but let's have something there that says you can officially be doing this. And so I'm open to like as strong of a pitch as DPW and the health department needs to make for like lowering whatever that cap is. Great, but like let's have it there. That doesn't seem that hard of a lift, but maybe I'm underestimating it. Shared kitchen spaces is less of a priority for me, not because I don't see it's a need or a way that we can be better, but just among the other priorities. I do think that we have this, the Business Innovation District.
Yeah.
I think that has shared kitchen. If it doesn't have shared kitchen, then let's add it to that. And
I think it does. Yeah,
Yeah, it's allowed use of it.
there's a lot of use there.
yeah. So that's okay, it's allowed. At some point, the market can come, like, maybe we could be louder about that, maybe we could be proactively talking to people who, like, have these needs, but that, to me, just isn't the priority. C1, definitely excited to talk about, excited to have its own visual identity. I'd be okay if that's our next big project. I'm more excited by the 40R, more excited by some of the stuff coming out of master plan, but I can equally get excited about Franklin Crossing, especially now that we've announced that within the next few years we'll have this. It'll really be this hub between the Children's Museum, this expanded winery. There are some recommendations in there to in the master plan to create a cohesive identity, and now with the rail trail spitting out there, I think that there are a lot of opportunities. So I'd be excited to jump into that. And then World Cup stuff, I think that's more staff than us, but as much as I can encourage us to, within whatever staff time we have, we've talked about it before, even small things offering our fields for teams is, helps us be a part of it in a way that brings people to town. Other things that are gonna come out of that, and this is gonna come through time, is working with the hotels about, transport to and from, putting just a one-pager together about Franklin in the World Cup. But we got some time to do that, and so to me that's not the priority. Anyway, I think that's the full list there. If you need me to be more specific around my top master plan, priorities coming out of the master plan, maybe that would be helpful for the department, for us to identify what some of the first steps there would be. Otherwise, I think most of it's here.
What do you think?
Tell us
Jamie's
a couple.
well, yeah, it can't all be one. But
Well, what I'm hearing though, and I think Brian should offer a little input in context too, if he could. It sounds like to me, I appreciate all the feedback. It sounds like to me maybe the crossing. I think Brian was already working on that a little bit. I will say that zoning change has a lot of, as you can imagine, has a lot of domino effect because there's so many places where C1 is referenced. But I think to Councilor Frangilla's point, and when we're getting ready for the World Cup, giving a visual identity to a neighborhood that you want to attract to people to go to, that's really where you're going to make probably a big bang for your buck, particularly with a lot of the development and some of the other ideas that are going around there. The 40R, I believe we already had some sketched out draft bylaws. Brian can correct me because it was a long time ago, but I think we did work on that. So to me, those two are the two that probably have some of the lower hanging fruit. And I also know that the process to do the crossing is probably going to take a while, just because the bylaw change to even change that would be a large written draft bylaw, changing a lot of pieces of the code. And then the home occupation, point well taken, be reasonable, brevity, try to just inch forward, baby steps, take a big step forward, whatever it is. Maybe we don't have to do everything all at once. And the issue there is simply with sewer and Board of Health. So what we will do at the next tech review meeting is we will get the folks back together and try to just scope out where do we leave off, where could we go, and how can we take a reasonable step forward without opening up, everything. I don't think a lot of the issues are necessarily about deliveries or stuff like that. I think it's just about protection of the public assets,
Right.
which is very real. It is very real. And I think some of it's also changing, how we think about this issue, right? Boards of health usually aren't always in favor of this stuff, right? Or health directors. So how do we get the Board of Health? Maybe we have the Board of Health come into an EDC meeting. Maybe we have the Board of Health staff to come in here to talk about it and say, what can we do to make a reasonable step forward to allow people to do, for lack of a better term, the micro businesses that I think people are just trying to do while they're working from home. So,
Jamie, can
yeah.
you hold on for a
Sure,
second?
sure.
Patrick has a
oh, I'm sorry,
question.
Pat.
Yeah, what is the common law for that now? And for the chair kitchens?
For the what?
For the home business?
Where?
Brian?
We do have a current, in the zoning bylaws, it does cover home occupations. We have sections in the document that cover different things. Right in the definition section of the document, it says home occupation, and it spells out what it can be and what it can't be. And we intentionally, at one point, back in 2009, I guess, stated that you cannot have auto-related home occupations in a residential district, right? And you can't have food-related without, because the Board of Health and others, the state for that matter, wants a commercial kitchen. They want food produced in a commercial kitchen. And to put a commercial kitchen in a house, you're changing you're changing the neighborhood, essentially. So that's the way it was written up, all right? So, but you can do home occupations that do not go into those type of businesses. We already have that. We have it all over the town. So you can stay away from those two. I think there might be one more here, problem.
Right, so this is
Dental,
about-
yeah, well, medical or dental. I don't want that at home.
That's what it's about though, right, is the cooking.
The
but
cooking, the cooking is the big
It's about
thing.
a home kitchen, right?
Right. So if somebody's gonna bake a few cakes and not tell anybody, okay, but shouldn't be doing it essentially if they're gonna make money off of it, because you have its own occupation going on. But you get to a certain scale, it gets to be a problem. And that's the reason for, of course, shared kitchen spaces, which is the next line down. And if we can attract an organization, whether it be for-profit, non-profit, to the town that would develop out a shared kitchen, and they are expensive, of course, because you're doing commercial kitchens, and you have to have more space than you would in just in any, like in your own kitchen. You have to have multiple areas and to really do it right, where you have a rotating schedule of certain people that come in, utilize it at certain times a day, or whatever the case may be. There's a lot of money involved there. I would love to have, whether it be the Mixed Innovation District or it be at 305 Union Street where they're doing those buildings over, but the investment is substantial there. So if you want to do that, if you want to seek out a place for that and do some research, I think that's great to have that there. But the reason when we talk about home occupation and we have a discussion like this and it doesn't end up going anywhere is because the only real thing that we're not really addressing at the home level is food. That's the one thing that you're not going to get the Board of Health behind you. You're not going to get the health department. And no matter what we do here, I think I think the shared kitchen is going to be the way to do things. But if we can get creative, you want to have a whole EDC meeting on that issue at some point in the near future. I think it's great, but I think that I don't know if you're going to be able to trust it with our zoning to make everybody happy. So there you go. I think it's, again, I don't want to just drop it and never talk about it again, because that's we end up doing all the time. The reason is because the Board of Health is not going to allow a non-commercial kitchen in a home, and if you put a commercial kitchen in a home, it becomes a business in a residential district, and it becomes more of an issue, more of a problem that way. If it's general residential 5 and you add, maybe in certain districts you add into the zoning that you can have a commercial kitchen actually in your home or in a residential district or something like that. But that's that's opening up a whole lot of.
Well, I mean, like in Holliston, there are people that the Board of Health inspects home kitchens.
Right.
And then, and there is a shared kitchen in Holliston as well. And so when a person's like going, well, I'm making too many cookies at home, I can't do this anymore, they go and they rent the shared kitchen.
Right. Is there a cap?
Right. I don't know. I find out what the cap is, but, and so it's about allowing somebody to start.
Right.
Right, so that's to be innovative, and to be an entrepreneur. Like, we have to allow people to start somewhere, and then we have to figure out where that cap is, so then they have to go to a shared kitchen. But to start in a shared kitchen is cost prohibitive.
Right.
Understood.
It costs a ton of money to rent those kitchens. And you have to have all your, like you have to transport your stuff to the kitchen, so then it gets contaminated, right? And we don't want that. So that's like, there's all these, pros and cons about it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I think we can figure that out. I think the issue has been our attitude at times, for good reasons, to protect public assets. If we can talk to Kathy and the Board of Health and maybe have them come in for a meeting, and just talk about how do we get the start. I like the starter idea, right? Like to Councilor Virgil's point too, maybe, I think the big issue with the DPW, as we've heard before, is really about when the sewer gets backed up, but the property owner always says it's the town's fault, usually, right? So if we put in a protection mechanism for the town, and you put that financial onus on the homeowner, not necessarily requiring them to have a grease trap,
Right.
but essentially trusting them to
something
manage
happens-
their own sewer pipe from their house to the town, and you put that financial responsibility on that homeowner. If you're gonna take that risk to have a home kitchen, not do a commercial kitchen, the Board of Health inspects a home kitchen, and say the person wants to make 100 cupcakes a month, right, whatever, for the 4 farmers market, whatever it is.
Yeah,
And they do damage to their sewer pipe, maybe they have to financially be responsible for fixing that themselves. Because ultimately, as you know, even when it's never the town's fault, it's always the town's fault. And I think, honestly, to cut to the chase, that's really where the friction is. Because homeowners want to dump things down the toilet or down the sink when they're making a lot of stuff and the batch of chocolate doesn't come out right, or the cupcake batter or the cake batter, and then they dump it down the toilet, the thing gets gummed up, and then they want the town to come over and fix all the problems. A grease trap would solve that. But if that financial responsibility and penalty was on the homeowner, maybe the homeowner would be more cautious about how they discharge the grease and fat that they might use. And maybe that will loosen things up. And through time and on, through over time, people will realize whether they want to do a home kitchen or a shared kitchen
yeah.
at all. But at least you'd give them the opportunity to start their business and see if their product is worth the risk of going into a full rental, place.
Right.
But really, the issue is really just about pointing the finger at whose responsibility is it to fix the problem in the sewer pipe.
Okay, all right.
That's
Well,
really what it is.
understandable, that's what the problem is.
I think that's pretty much
I mean, it's
it.
nice that we figured it out.
Well, that's
Pretty close. I don't think it's the only, I think that's,
We will find other issues, I'm sure.
I know.
there's other
I know.
issues, but,
No, I'm sure there will be
there's
lots.
other issues about, I think part of the problem is, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Everyone's worried about the cat getting into the salsa jar on the counter, and foodborne illness, and what if it's not the right milk, is there disease? But if we worry about every single thing ever, we're never gonna make progress.
Right.
And I do agree with you, I do agree, since the pandemic especially, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit out there where people are just looking for a leg up to find out, is their product even worth it? Can I sell it at the farmer's market? If the bread doesn't sell and people hate it and it's disgusting, at least I didn't go into a 2-year rental agreement and ruin my family's financials forever.
Right.
So maybe there's a healthy balance of a starter, maybe a better word than starter, but some sort of,
Sourdough starter.
starter something where we can talk to Doug and the Board of Health about how you deal with these things and how the property residential owner is responsible for any damage that they do to their own property. But then obviously their risk is, possibly doing damage to a public asset. And
maybe.
but at least that's a balance.
Maybe we can say, we're gonna keep track of how much water you use. And we're gonna check, I don't know any of that stuff, but it's like if you use a lot of water, all of a sudden, then maybe you're making too many batches of spaghetti sauce, I don't know,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so anyways, Brian wants to add a little bit. Do you wanna add anything?
I'm
Are we
good.
done?
I'm
We're
good.
done? Okay.
This is obviously something we should be working on. We'll be happy to put that on your list of
Okay.
goals, the things, it's
Right.
already there.
It's there.
and,
I mean, the shared kitchen space, I think that's the next step, like, from this kind of starter thing, is the next step is the shared kitchen, like, that's the way people progress.
Mhm.
It's like, you know, it's like a pop-up, and then it's like the brick and mortar, it's like that, those are the normal steps that people go through now, and, I, personally, I love that idea, I think we can already put it in places. Maybe the people in Halston will start one in Franklin.
Shared kitchen?
Yeah, they have a big kitchen, yeah, it's really great, but anyways, yeah, Kobe.
For what's worth, I organized my priorities out of the Franklin for All and master plan into 3 main buckets in order, based on the positive impact that I think that they would have to the town. First would be parking, really, or let's call it shared parking. And shared parking covers a few things that we've talked about, and this was in the Franklin for All, so, you know, there's precedent, but it's also very well documented in the master plan as currently drafted. Looking at stormwater exemptions for shared parking, other codified, like, here's what a shared parking agreement would look like, and if you have the shared parking agreement, we're gonna reduce your parking minimums in this way, and just have that be standardized as opposed to what currently exists, which is like, you know, language that says, if you share parking, then that'll be considered, but I think we could formalize that. And the real big one under this parking that I feel very strongly would do the most positive good for Franklin would be to establish a residential parking permit in the downtown, where we have overnight use of our downtown town-owned lots as well as the streets. There's plenty of precedent for other similar towns engaging in this. In fact, I think we used to have, but we can look that up. But to me, you know, what kills me is seeing projects like 19 Dean, which had a ton of opportunity. It's not the worst thing in the world, but instead of businesses on the forefront to continue an active street front, instead we got curb cuts, parking garages, despite it existing 10 feet from an empty lot. That to me makes 0 sense and is counter to the future of Franklin. That starts, and the reason why they said they couldn't waive the parking is because we didn't have a way to manage that parking. Well, let's put that way to manage parking, which is a residential parking permit. That would be my number 1 parking there. 2 in order would be what I'm calling downtown business use. This is like light stuff. It's things like anytime Mr. Pizzini talks to you, he just wants to put a shelf on a summer day outside with some shoes there. That makes it a little more appealing. There are a few laws, there are a few rules like that that I think are worth revisiting. The gelato place had the blade sign that they couldn't put in. Just making sure our entries face the sidewalks, looking at the transparency and the size requirements of windows so that future buildings continue to come in and have these open windows that add to our active storefront. I don't think that that's too big of a use or too controversial. It's an easy way to help a lot of people. The third one that I'm putting in there is really just like where we stopped working on the Franklin for All stuff. I'm calling it downtown dimensions. We did a lot on number of units and units per acre and units per per lot. We didn't talk that much about minimum lot sizes, frontage, depth, width, setbacks, yard dimensions, maximum impervious coverage, heights. Those are dimensional stuff, but they make a massive difference to the type of development that could come forward and move forward without having every step of the way be a fight. For any of these, I'd be happy to work with us and take some work off the, off administration by just giving a starting point so that you guys can work from, so that you're not just like looking at blank screens and trying to come up with things that we'd like to see. I have drafted out starting points for each of those 3 things. I'd be happy to, sort of shoot that with the group, take some some load off of the department, but then allow them to use their expertise, talk to other towns, come back to us and say, here's what makes sense on any of those. If you ask me, I want to get it all done, but I'd be happy to talk. But all of those would be my priorities, along with the 40R, above even the home occupation, even though that might be an easier one to knock off.
Great, thanks. Colby, Jamie, do you have anything?
Well, no, that's all great feedback. It really is. That's what the point of the meeting was.
Yeah.
We have to get all that done by about July to start going through the bylaw process if we're gonna get these things done, obviously before the election in November. So we'd have to have proposals over the next 4 or 5 months, pretty much every meeting to get to that level. Just because, there is a lot of work associated with that. We appreciate if you send anything to us, we'll start with that. We'll always take the help. I will say, on the residential parking permit, I think we've refereed that quite a bit. The chief has come in here. He's been traditionally opposed to it because of the cost of the administration, and it is expensive. I also, part of the thing with parking I'm struggling with is our lease is up with Ferraras in March. I've already reached out to them to try to continue that relationship. Assuming they say yes, that's great. But we don't have a parking problem in downtown. So, at least from my viewpoint, there's a lot of parking. I do think the parking lot is an interesting point that you brought up. Very sensitive issue, right? We had a parking bylaw for a long time. We went through a lot of work to rechange it, get the kiosks. Commuting is dead. The train is dead. The T is dead. It's sad. It's depressing. I don't like it either. I wish it were a different way. Beacon Hill has already primed a pretty intense debate on this issue coming up already. The Ways and Means chairman has basically said, and the House is going to invest every extra penny of the surtax money into the MBTA. I met recently with Brian Kane right here. We did a photo op and talked to him about their deficits. The MBTA is going to take a very, 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 very long time to get back on its feet, where I think you're going to see that commuter lot, filled up again. I can tell you, to your point, Councilor Fragile, you're right. Every developer and every resident and every business wants a permanent parking space right in that Depot Street parking lot. So if the council at some point, or the EDC, wants to give up that parking lot and sell it off, rent it off, lease it off, you're going to make a lot of people upset in town. But I will say, obviously there's a lot of empty spaces, so I don't know exactly how to deal with that. There's not a huge demand for parking in downtown other than residential parking. And to get downtown redevelopment going, every building owner or developer that I've ever talked to says we need all the parking in your Depot Street parking lot because we can't fit parking in anywhere else. We can't go underground. We reduced the commercial industrial, which many have said thank you. They agree with that. But I don't know about the parking stuff. That also could be pretty divisive in town in terms of the lot, but yet people don't use it, right? So I don't know where. We've promoted it, it's there, there's revenue coming in, there is some spaces being used, but it still seems like the demand for that parking lot is deeded parking dedicated to residential development in downtown. 19 Dean Ave, Depot Plaza, you name it. But once you give up that lot, you will then have no place to park for downtown for the day when you do have a high demand, hopefully, for coming into downtown.
What about a certain percentage?
Or a certain well, you could do a certain percentage. You could do a certain percentage. You could do a certain percentage. You could do 50%. But
I was thinking like 10% to start.
but that's a public bidding process procurement.
Okay.
So you don't know how, you've got to maximize your value of your asset. Just giving a few spaces to somebody because there's a development next door is not maximizing the public value of those spaces. It may be helpful to that residential developer right now, but you're giving them on the cheap. So you'd have to do some sort of bidding process. And I do think bids would be, my educated guess would say, given how many developers in Franklin in my decade here who have asked for parking spots there, my educated guess tells me there would be a high demand for deeded parking, whether it's 10%, 20%, or the whole lot. So parking is certainly there. And Brian, could you give a quick do we have a 40R draft bylaw?
We have, yeah, I mean, 6 months ago, whenever it was, we were talking about.
Probably a year ago,
40R.
yeah.
We actually did create a draft bylaw, which was reviewed a couple of times by the committee. And at that point, we were not sure whether we're gonna go and find specific properties, to, you know,
Right.
and the property owners, or we were gonna do an overlay, or whatever. But that's where that process stopped, and we were on other priorities at that time. So to pick it up from there is not that big a deal. We're just gonna go back and reread what we read, and,
Right.
you know, we
This seems
wrote
like it was a long time
and
ago.
go from there. That's not that big a deal to pick that up. I think we should just have, we should have a really good discussion about whether it is an overlay, or whether or not we actually contact some people and bring them in to talk with them. We have had discussions, by the way, with a couple of people in the past on properties and things, but, you know, nothing really positive came out of the discussions, or at least, I mean, there are possibilities. For instance, a mixed-use innovation district was one possibility. The southern end of the Factory Place property, the southern end, they've cleared that, and they're gonna be putting some parking in there, but there was plenty of room at one time, a couple of years ago, for, you know, apartment building, or whatever
Yeah.
the case may be. But I think identifying on a map where you'd like them, if you want an overlay, that's great. Whether it's just gonna be the, you know, downtown corridor, whether you're gonna include I know there's people in the Cottage Street, Ruggles area, there's a lot of areas that we could put overlay on and see what happens, if you will.
Separate overlays, you mean?
Yeah.
Like around downtown, around the crossing?
Wherever, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, the crossing area, for sure, yeah.
All right, excellent. Thank you,
Yeah.
Brian. Kobe?
Just a quick note on the parking piece, because again, I really, like, if I could do one thing for the rest of the year, it would be to get a residential parking permit. I wanna make that, I just wanna make a distinction between a few things that came up. I'm not talking about selling or leasing existing town spaces. I am talking about, we have a certain amount of town spaces. I'm guessing between the street and the lots in downtown commercial district and GR5, we have 200 parking spaces, town-managed parking spaces. Most of them on the street, but a good 100 plus in our lots. And that are assets, right? Those have value, and we're currently getting nothing from them. And we could be getting something from them. There should be a revenue-neutral, positive program. We get to set whatever price we need to make back the money that it takes to administer such a program. And again, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, this is a very common program for towns to have. We don't have to engage with developers. We don't have to do anything. We just have to say, here's what it would look like. You know, for $100 a year, you get a sticker, and you can park in the town lots and these, except for the snow day things, and you gotta consider those. That's money coming in to the town, and it's a way for developers to say, hey, I'm right next to this town lot. I can tell you that I don't need to add X amount new parking lots in my space, because if you want to live here and bring a car, great, you're gonna engage with the town and pay them as much as you need to in order to park there. That's just how towns work. I'm almost positive that's how Franklin used to work. I don't think we need to overthink that.
Yeah.
Okay. Jamie?
So we can do that. If you want to repeal the bylaw that we approved a couple years ago, and we could we did have a permit system, right? It was just at one point it was commuters, because that was where the demand was. We could go right back to that system and create residential parking permits. We have, I think it's 70 spaces in Depot Street lot, right? We couldn't lease the library or Ferraris because we don't own it, so we couldn't add those spaces in. But if you took the 70 or so spaces from Depot and you wanted to give the 30, I'm making this up, 35 of those for residential permits, that's exactly what we used to do with commuters. So we could charge people a ton of money, however that is, $500 a quarter, $1,000 a year, whatever it is, to reserve that space. But you're gonna have a lot of competition for that, and it's not gonna help with the planning board process. Because you can't approve a 40-unit building and not have some dedicated parking. You can't say, well, we're gonna approve, I mean, they could give the waiver to do the parking and say, well, we're gonna approve that 20-unit, building. But when you buy the unit, you may get a residential parking pass, or you may not, but it's gonna be a lottery system. So we could easily do that. I misunderstood. We could easily, if the EDC wants to go to the council and say, we're gonna X amount of spaces from Depot, and say, we're gonna put those in a residential parking system, you'll have a huge demand for those. I have no doubt you'll have a huge demand for those. Just like you have in Boston, right? 6 to 6 or something like that, 6 to 8. And that's your space. And then once a year, there's a lottery to give people a fair shake, or however you want to devise it. That's exactly how we did the commuter spaces at the police department for many, many years. And that part of it was not an administrative nightmare. That part was not. So you could do something like that. But then obviously the consequences, you reduce the spaces. So that is something you could think about. That would not require a big admin expense. The admin expense, as you recall, and was my misunderstanding, is when the chief gets up and says, do you want a residential permit system within all of downtown commercial for all the people on street parking? That takes a lot of money to invest into the system, to have people go pick up, like in Cambridge or Boston, pick up a pass. They have to show 3 pieces of mail. They have to make sure that, that they're a resident there. And then they get the residential parking pass to park on the street, like in the city. That's a whole different beast. That is a huge cost to the PD. You would have to add a ton, probably a pretty fair amount of, you'd have to have a parking clerk, you'd have to have a lot of other stuff for enforcement. But if you're just talking about residential passes in terms of a lottery, not, just pick it out of a hat, that's something you could propose to the council to see if they would dedicate an X amount of spaces that you would put out on a quarterly basis, on a 6-month basis, or an annual basis. And you'd have an annual lottery, and 40, whatever the number is, the spaces you want to put up, those 40 people are the winners. It doesn't guarantee you a space forever, right? Because if you're going to guarantee a space forever, well, now you're deeding that space to that residential unit in perpetuity, and that's what traditionally the planning board has wanted to see.
Happy to respond now. I don't know if you want to, I still feel strongly that does the most to actually enable development in our downtown, would be revisiting that. Yeah, it's not the same as saying we have a parking problem. I do think that we used our, have made strong progress on our management of day-to-day parking. What remains now is really, while we have them mandatory to be open, no one's allowed to park there. That's a lost opportunity and leads to new space being created for parking, even though we have empty space for parking already there. That's what I'm looking to see us better manage. I'd like to talk through somewhere between a lottery of the spaces and a district-wide parking pass, but that to me is an exciting conversation for us to engage in over the next year, and would be my priority if you're asking. Again, I gave you some other ones.
We have a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Frangillo. Is that, you got it?
I'm good.
You good? I think everybody has enough to work on.
Yes.
Anybody? Anything else, Councilor Chandler?
No, I thank all 3 of you for your passion for this. I'm a little behind on this.
Oh, you're catching up, come on. Councilor Sheridan, anything else to add? Okay, well, thank you so much,
Thank
Jamie,
you. Oh, thank
Amy, and Brian. This was good, great, and I can't wait to get back to work.
Me too.
Next week.
It's 2 weeks, yeah, that's right, that's it.
All right, and with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, thank
night.
you. Cool, this is the first meeting I haven't talked back to you about parking. We did good.